You are now listening to the MVP podcast where we explore the business of sports. My name is Courtney.
And I'm Jimmy.
And on this episode, we talk to lawyer and professional football player Chris Osei-Kusi. And he is he's impressive, bro. He's supremely articulate. This guy is accomplished. He's the only person that I know who had a choice between going to play pro football and leaving pro football to become a lawyer. Became a lawyer and still ended up playing pro football. So he talks about his time in the NFL with the Cleveland Browns. He talks about running the fastest 40 at the CFL Combine. He talks about a lot of things. He gets nitty gritty on the rookie salaries from the CFL compared to the rookie salary as a lawyer, and really talks about the process of, getting comfortable in uncomfortable situations and how football prepared him for the things that he's doing now in his professional career. So this is a great conversation for anybody who's trying to do more to elevate themselves and to continue that student athlete mentality in their professional life and in their personal life. Continue learning, continue growing. Great one here. And I think you guys are going to enjoy it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not going to add any more. You already kind of summed it up there. But guys, make sure you listen to the end on this one. I think you're going to really enjoy it. The motivational part of this at the very end, where it's like, this is how you transition, whether you've been an athlete or not. If you want to succeed, these are some of the basic things that you got to do to be able to put yourself out there and be successful in your career. So guys, enjoy this one. And you already know what you got to do. We're giving you these gems for free. So you got to hit the like button. If you're on YouTube, subscribe. If you're on Spotify or Apple and you're listening to this, go on YouTube and hit that subscribe button. Y'all see Courtney with the fresh shots. He came on here with the fresh Ginsu. So hit that subscribe button for my man. Leave us a 5-star rating. Without further ado, here's our conversation with Chris Osei-Kusi.
When people ask you what you do for a living, what do you say?
That's a good question. It honestly depends on the time of year I'm in. And I think for me, I've been really good at separating Chris Osei-Kusi, the football player, and Chris Osei-Kusi, the lawyer, and Chris Osei-Kusi, the entrepreneur. Although we're all one, I think there's different seasons in which some take a little bit more priority, right? Mm-hmm. And I do strongly believe you can have them all, just not at the same time. And with me, there's different seasons in which, okay, lawyering, this is my priority. Let me make sure I get this down. Keep the main thing.
Do people call it lawyering? Is that a real thing? Or did you just make that up?
No, it's a real thing. That's a real thing. It's lawyering. Okay. So I think it just depends on like the type of season I am, but it's truly hard even for myself to like put a label on it. I would just say like, I'm everything I need to be.
Yeah. And, I respect you wholeheartedly for making this work. I know as somebody who's juggling multiple different projects and thriving and killing it in all of them, like squeezing in some time. It's a late night when we're recording. I know the magic of TV make you feel like this is live, but no. So aside from managing your time and stuff like that, like what allows you to, or what drives you to do so much? Because it's not like you're working at Foot Locker. Like when I was playing my rookie season in the off season, I worked at Foot Locker. You're kind of doing something a little bit bigger than that. Like why take on so much?
I think what drives me is the fear of regret, right? Like I never, ever want to be in a situation in which I regret taking an opportunity. I regret how hard I worked. I regret like looking back at it and just regretting the fact that I didn't do it. Like for me, that's always been my biggest thing. So when I was going through the process of football, I said, okay, I could be pretty good at this. Let me put my all into it, see what comes of it. I never wanted to regret like half-assing it, because if you half-ass it, you're always gonna look back and think, damn, what if I did this? Yeah. So for me, I was all in with that. Same with lawyer. I went to law school. I said, okay, I'm in law school. I'm here. Might as well see how good I can get. Might as well see what kind of job I can do. And that's just kind of the mindset I keep, whether with like football, whether in the lawyer world, in any world. That's just the mindset I keep. And I think it served me well because I don't really have many regrets at this stage of my life. And I think that's a powerful thing to say.
Yeah, of course. And I mean, if you can say that, that's kind of the ultimate goal, because it's a continuous iteration. You're a different person today than you were last week and a year ago and 5 years ago. So it's kind of hard to, people ask you that cliche, where do you see yourself in 5-10 years? And you're always changing. So, but let's go back like however many years. What year is this coming up for you in the Canadian Football League?
This will be year the COVID and all this stuff like kind of messed up. I got drafted in 2019.
Okay. So yeah, tell us that story, because you went to a couple different schools. Football became an option, and then the law thing came in. So like, quickly walk us through that whole narrative right there.
Yeah. So started playing football in high school. Like my grade 9 year, I was actually on the volleyball team, and my football coaches came up to me, looked at me up and down, and said, "Why weren't you at practice?" I looked at them. I said, "I'm not on the football team. I don't play football." Then they looked at each other, kind of laughed, and said, "Yeah, bro, we'll see you at practice tomorrow." And that's kind of how it started, right? And then I was on the football team the next day, really, started practicing, and then kind of realized I could get pretty good at it. So again, just got better and better. And then university came around, and I had to pick a school. I ended up choosing Queen's University. So played at Queen's for 4 years, started applying to law schools in my 4th year, not being entirely sure, but kind of just thinking, what if, right? Like, let's see if I can get in here.
What was your undergrad in?
My undergrad was in political science.
Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah. So a lot of people in that like sphere kind of go to law school, to be honest. But for me, it wasn't on my mind, right? Like I was really, all right, I'm going to pros. So I don't really have time to like think about this until I was in that environment. And that's when things changed a little bit, but got accepted to law school in March. When I came back to school, I was at Windsor. So I decided to play on the Windsor football team, and glad I made that decision, because like Coach JP, Coach Ciselli, the whole Windsor team, like they were like amazing, not only to me, but to also the program. And they were new at that time of year, ushering in something new. So it was great. And then from there, drafted in 2019. And also that was the same year I went to the Cleveland Browns minicamp. And
what was that like?
So the Cleveland Browns minicamp was crazy, because a few things that came to my mind. One, it confirmed my suspicion that if I was born in America, then I'd be in the NFL. And I'm very, very confident of that. And when I was at the camp, like I did not look at a place, I did not feel at a place. The coaches would like pull me aside. Like there was even one story where we're all in the locker room, and the assistant GM comes down. He's like, "Yo, you come here." And I'm like,
why do we talk to people like that?
I've only been here for 2 days. Like, there's no way I'm about to get sent home. Like, you know. And he's like, "Man, you're having a great camp. Keep doing what you're doing, and there might be a spot for you out here." Mm-hmm. I'm thinking like, oh shoot, because most times when guys get brought out to a mini camp, it's really just a camp body, right? Like
just a body.
Real opportunity for you to get a real spot. But the way they were evaluating me, like, made it feel, and at least from what they were saying, that I had a real shot at it. So great experience for sure. Very different in the CFL, obviously, in terms of like the facilities and the resources and everything else. But skill level was better in the NFL, but similar.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's like every guy there has some kind of freakish quality. Like you might be super fast, or the guy might be huge, and then the guys who are like the elite ones got the whole package. But you come to the CFL and you got guys that are like this, all the same things, because half of them literally just left an NFL camp or NFL team. So I know what you mean there. So you're with the Cleveland Browns, and then when you ended up leaving there, what came next?
So leave the Cleveland Browns, go to Montreal. And at this point, I was already accepted to law school. So I'm figuring out, should I defer my law school acceptance and just need to worry about law a different time, or just go to law school and come back to football, because football is going to be there at any time. Yeah. And I was speaking to a few lawyers. So I'm going to shout out like Jock Climby, Brad Elbert. Those are two guys who played in the CFL.
Jock Climby's a lawyer?
Yeah, he's a lawyer.
Yo, he's one of the best receivers of all time.
I know. And he went to Queens, so he was a Queens guy. So I messaged him. He ended up talking a bunch. And he was just like, "Man, if it was me, I'd probably go to school, because once you start being a pro athlete, it's pretty tough to go back to a student lifestyle." So, and it's 1 year. Like, it's not really that huge of a difference. And I always knew in my gut, like, that was the right decision. I told myself, they wanted to put me on the practice roster, I was leaving. If I was active, I would probably stay. And they wanted to put me on the PR, so I made my decision like very easy. And then
and which year was this?
This was in 2019.
Oh, so you kind of were smart about this too, because you wouldn't have known that 2020 the season was going to be canceled, but going back to school at that time ended up being, in hindsight, like the perfect move.
Literally the perfect move, because law school was originally supposed to take me with the original plan, like 4 years of on and off and season, not season, and getting a bunch of accommodations and what have you. And then I go and do the first year, boom, knock that out. COVID hits, the season's canceled. Now I've got 2 years done. I've got 1 year left of law school. The effects of COVID are still happening. So now I'm in law school, but it's virtual. So I'm in Edmonton playing for the team, and then I'm coming home and doing classes. So COVID, and that, obviously I wouldn't have been able to do that. Classes were in person. So COVID obviously was terrible in a lot of ways, but for me, it was very valuable in some way because it helped fast track a lot of what I was doing.
Yeah. And so then, boom, you get into we get past that. Then you get into playing more as you've graduated from law school. What's it called? A JD? That's what you get? What's that stand for?
Juris Doctor. So you can call me a doctor if you want. I don't know.
Damn, JD. Okay, that's cool though. So you got the JD and you show up at training camp and immediately people are hitting you with the lawyer jokes. They have to be.
Man, those don't stop. It doesn't matter like what team, when I met them, if I've known them forever, if I just met them a week ago. And usually I don't talk about it much. Like, to be honest with you, like a lot of people don't know until they do. And then once they know, they never forget.
Yeah.
And even this year, guys are like, oh, two names lawyer. That's I was like, bro.
Well, I mean, it's rare though, because you find guys like you mentioned, you're entrepreneurial, you're a content creator, you're a pro athlete. You like guys wear a lot of hats, but it's not typically one where they would go into law. So, but this is like the burning question that I have, among other things. When you come out of law school, you go into, is that when you're an articling intern, or does that happen before you graduate?
You're an articling student after you graduate.
So like, what's that process like?
Like the articling process?
Yeah. Like what does that even mean? Does that mean you're just finding articles and putting them in alphabetical order, or like, what are you doing?
I wish it meant that. So
he's like, you just disrespected my whole career. No,
you're good. You're good.
Yeah.
As long as the check's good, you can say what you want. So the way the process works, in second year of law school, they do this big thing called OCI, which is like on-campus interviews. Mm-hmm. And you essentially, it's kind of like speed dating in a sense, right? Like you apply to a bunch of firms, the firms that want to give you an opportunity. You guys have like a 15-minute interview. If you impress them in that 15-minute interview, you get another opportunity. They call it like an in-firm interview. And after that, they choose who they want and extend their offers. Then you get hired as a summer student. And then once you're a summer student, you do that for 12 weeks or 12 to 16 weeks. And then the following year, you stay at the same firm and you come back to article. And that process really, like you really are just a junior lawyer, right? So I would be doing similar, not the same, but similar things to a first year associate. And the plan is really just to expose you to a bunch of areas of law to see what you like.
Mm-hmm. And so how competitive is that kind of on-campus interviews portion? It sounds kind of like the combine for lawyers, where you're doing interviews with teams. They're probably, I don't know if they would be testing you on stuff, but are they just trying to see your personality? Like what's those conversations like?
Yeah. So the process is very competitive because there's a lot of obstacles as the process goes on, right? That kind of like filtering mechanisms. So the first one is your grades. Like these firms, especially the big Bay Street firms, they get about 1,000 to 1,500 applications. And when they get that, they got to get it down to like 250, right? So a lot of it, if your grades are not good enough, you're gone. Like it's pretty quick. Yeah. They simply don't have the time to interview everybody. So let's say they get it down to 200. Now they're going from like different schools. Mine was virtual, but usually people come into the firm and they meet with like a student director, they meet with maybe a few lawyers, do some interviews. And then from that process, which would be like the OCI, the in-firm, it might go down to like 50 people. Mm-hmm. And then from those 50 people who actually get an offer, it ranges from firm to firm. My firm only hired like 12 people, I think. So 1,000 applications and 12 people get a job. So
Yeah.
very competitive.
Very competitive. And then you said you kind of, while you're articling, you're getting a sense of different types of law. What kinds did you like dabble in? Where did you end up landing? And like, what the hell are you actually doing when you're articling? Like, I gotta know. I'm not trying to throw shade. This is completely new to me.
Nah, so what I did, I had a litigation rotation. So different firms have different sectors of the law that they have lawyers in. So a bigger firm like mine will have real estate law, will have insolvency law, restructuring, we'll have banking, we'll have corporate, and corporate's like its own bag of worms. It has like M&A, it's got capital markets, like there's securities, there's public and private, there's technology, there's entertainment. Like there's so much different topics of law that all kind of fit into that neat blanket of corporate. And then you also have things like administrative law, you'll have litigation. So there's no shortage of things to do, that's for sure. And for me, my first rotation was in litigation, which is more
That's the stuff you see on TV.
That's the stuff that you see on TV. It doesn't look like that, really, to be honest, but that is the closest thing that resembles it, because what I'm doing now has no resemblance to what you see on TV. To be honest, it's more corporate. And I guess maybe Suits is like the closest, and even that, it's not really, like, things don't move that quickly, obviously. But yeah, so litigation is what you see on TV in a sense. And then I did some financing work. And then I split my article into two, obviously, to go back and play. And then this time around, I started out in corporate and did a lot of like securities work, some public and private M&A, which is just a bigger company targeting a company which they like and like buying them.
Yeah.
And because if you think, I know this, just if we're talking business here, like the more market that you can control and have, I don't want to say a monopoly because that is obviously illegal and frowned upon. The competition.
Look at the lawyer coming out. I love that.
Whoever else, you'll frown upon that for sure. But the more you control the market, like telecommunications, right? Like, yeah, there's Rogers, there's Bell, and these like subsidiaries of these companies, so they own the market, which means you can set the price. So M&A is pretty similar in that respect. Like a large company will buy another one, maybe their competitor, maybe they do similar things, like they feel they can make them a little bit more efficient. They acquire them and just become bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. So it can get, the numbers can get really big, and that's what makes it really interesting, to be honest, because you're seeing like hundreds of millions, sometimes billions of dollars move around, and it probably doesn't even feel real. But after a sense, it makes more sense to buy it than build it yourself. Yeah, no, and if you can kind of target a company in which you see some inefficiencies and you can buy it, make it more, because a lot of the PE guys, like private equity guys, what they'll buy a company, make it more efficient, run it for 5 years, 2 to 5x their money, and then sell it. And it's like, damn, you just bought this for 250 million and now you're selling it for $1 billion 4 years later. Yes. Yeah. $750 million in 4 years is nothing to sneeze at, And so the lawyers in that are really involved at the initial transaction and at the final transaction, making sure that the terms are, bulletproof, meaning there's no loopholes that people are trying to get over on you where they can, not come through on what they've promised and those types of things. Right. It's just to make sure that everybody knows where each other stands, basically. So, what are the hours like for a lawyer? I mean, on TV, it seems like it's damn near 24/7. Yeah, I would say the hours are. It's really the hours are. Yeah, I think so. I have to pause because it does fluctuate. It's ebbs and flows. Like there's some days where I might work 12, 14, 15 hours. And there's some days where you work 2 or 3, right? Like it just depends on the type of deal you're on and how quickly those deals are moving. And like just this past few weeks, I've been like very, very busy because it was a pretty large deal that was moving across and they wanted it done relatively quickly. Was that M&A or was that securities? That was some M&A stuff. Yeah. And like that is, so when you're on a timeline like that, things get very, very busy. And and I think this is more so like me, I'm kind of at the mercy of other people right now because I'm obviously very low in the totem pole. But I think the higher that you get, you can have a better feel for it. But at the same time, this is a client services business, and you have clients who pay you lots of money to get
Yeah.
a thing done. So when they want it done, usually there's not really much negotiation and wiggle room because if
Yeah.
you don't do it, someone else will. And that's very similar to football, right? Like they're gonna
Yeah.
find someone to do it, especially if I have this much money. So either you can be the guy or you're not.
Yeah. And so just the structure of how a law firm works pretty much, does a company pay a law firm, like, just make up a round number, like would they pay a law firm $100,000 and it's like, all right, you're going to work for me for the duration of this project? Or do they structure it where it's like counting hours, or like how does that work? And like, yes.
Yeah, no, it's a good question. And I would say every client is different, right? Like some clients are a little bit more case sensitive. So they'll be like, we have X amount of money in the budget. Like, what can you get? Like, give us a quote, you know? And within that quote, like, if you're going to go over, you got to let us know because, like, this is what we have. And they're more cost sensitive clients, but some clients, when they're trying to make like $1 billion deals, they understand that it's going to cost a lot of money. So it's not like a one time fee or anything. Everything's charged based on the hour, and different lawyers have different rates. So what I would charge would be way different than what a 10-year senior partner would charge.
Yeah.
And I think obviously they take that into consideration. Like it's much easier for me to do some of the work and then send to them and them to fix it up as opposed to them doing everything because it's going to cost the client a lot more money, right? So
like, could I directly hire you today?
no.
He
Not
said,
because-
nah, there's levels to this, boy.
Well,
You gotta.
for a few reasons. One, I I'm still articling. So I'm not technically a lawyer yet, but I passed the bar, and the call to the bar would be like sometime in June, I think. So after that process is over, then yeah, you would be able to hire me. But the other part to that is, I don't know if you would want to pay our rates. And I think, I think corporations are okay paying our rates. People, not so much.
What's a rate like? Just ballpark.
So again, it really depends on who you're hiring, but for someone at my level, it could be anywhere from 500 to 650 an hour.
Dang, I just got a cut and I paid my barber $65 to pull up at the house, and I was like, it's a fresh cut, so I respect it. But I'm like, man, he's doing well. But,
Right.
But I guess when you're a lawyer, it's a different level. And so wait, that's like the rookie salary?
Yeah, like first year associates, depending as again, it changes based on what section of law they're in, because if there's something more specialized like tax or something, like they may charge a little bit more. But we don't set our rates. I wish we did. The firm sets our rates, and it's very different from firm to firm, I would assume. But the most of them, especially in the big Bay Street firms, it's probably like 500 to 600, 500 to 650 in that range. And in New York is a whole different ballgame. Like in America, they charge way more. So
yeah,
very file and client dependent.
So then 2 questions is, what's an example of what like a senior lawyer would charge? And then like also the question is, when a lawyer charges X, like, is it like selling cars or selling, tech software where you're going to keep like 5% of everything that you sell off top? Or is it like, how does that work? Do you know?
So the first question, a senior partner, and it really depends on the field, like a senior tax lawyer or like a senior corporate lawyer, like it could be different based on how like in demand they are, like how unique their practice area is. But if I had to ballpark it, and this is me ballpark, I can't go and like search up anywhere up, and my firm would never tell me, but it's probably between 1,200 to 2,000 an hour. And then
You said how many hour days?
Right. Money comes in, I'm telling you. And in terms of keeping a percentage, so that part I actually don't know, because that's more a partner thing. When you become a partner, then you're a little bit more involved in how the compensation is split up. But until then, you're kind of just on a salary. So the law is a very need to know subject. So it makes sense that the firms are on a very need to know basis.
No, that makes sense. And I mean, you're like everything is like client privilege. It's
Right.
close to the vest. You don't want to give up your secrets for the, if you're especially like litigation or any kind of contract, like you want to show people what they need to see and don't give
That's it.
away all the goods. So that makes a lot of sense. But would you consider the rookie salary better in the CFL or in law?
No, no,
That's good. I like that. That's good.
no, for sure, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, yo, I saw recently a video you posted on social media and you're talking about a deadline that you guys had where I think you had 30 minutes or something. This was like one of those scenarios from TV. You had like 30 minutes to submit some paperwork to a judge and it was like a high pressure situation, but like football prepped you for that. Can you just talk about, the mindset and how you think your career has given you maybe an advantage or a little bit of experience, even though you don't have as much experience specific to law, you got experience working under pressure?
Yeah, 100%. And you're right. The litigation is not really like TV, but in that moment, it did feel like a scene in the movie. I was like, damn, we got 30 minutes and wait, everything's on me? I'm all right, let's do it. And I think in that moment, like you just think the training camp, right? You think the training camp, you think to the fourth quarter in a tight game. Like football itself teaches you so many transferable skills that if you truly tap into will benefit you in the professional world, whether it's like dealing with pressure, whether it's time management, whether it's communication, like, or whether it's just being in a spotlight, being in high pressure, tense situations. And again, football, every single day you're being evaluated, right? Every day you're being evaluated to see if there's someone better, to see if there's someone cheaper, to see if there's someone the coach might walk that just likes them a little bit more. Like every single day that's being put up. And I think being in that situation, of course, you never really get 100% comfortable with it, but you get used to it, right? And you get used to building up a mental fortitude to be able to keep going the next day, to be able to come back again and again after a bad day, after a good day, after a day where the coach tells you you might not be here next week. Like you build up that mental fortitude to keep coming back. And I think in that process of being a pro athlete, a student athlete, you're gaining all these skills that when you get to the working world, you're like, oh, damn, I remember a moment in which coach said 2-minute drill. We got 2 minutes left. We need a touchdown. Let's go. Mm-hmm. And it's the second day of training camp. You don't really know the plays. All you know is the guy beside you, the guy that's covering you. You still don't know his name. And coach says, we got 2 minutes, right? And when that kind of situation happens, it's not, hey, coach, sorry, I've only been here for 2 days. Can't go with this team. They'll look at you like, you can't go with this team. You can't go with our team. You know what I mean? You got to go.
Yeah.
But that kind of situation preps you for what it is to come, because I couldn't say, I've only been here for 3 days. I don't really know enough about this file. Let's maybe give it to someone else. I don't know enough. All of a sudden, you lose kind of the confidence that the team has in you, right? And that's very, very quickly. So again, being in those situations in football just assisted me so much, because now I can have situations in which I can compare it to that puts my mind at more ease. I wouldn't say at ease completely, but I'm more ease.
Yeah, I think we were talking to Henoch, and he said it's good to have a healthy sense of paranoia sometimes. Right. Just a little, just to keep you on your toes and keep that fight or flight going so you could be at your optimal performance. And so, just talking about your football career, you're training right now. It's the off season. Yeah. How are you balancing training and still, articling, lawyering, if you will? How are you balancing that? I know time management's got to be, everybody talk about time management, motivation, but how are you juggling that? Like, what's a day look like?
So for me, it's not motivation at all, right? It's just discipline, because motivation comes and goes all the time. Like there's some days where I do not want to get up, right? Like I worked till 10 p.m. and I got to get up at 6 a.m. I'm tired. I don't want to. And if I was focused on motivation, there'd be a lot of missed workouts. But for me, because I'm so focused on like the discipline aspect and what that feeling of regret, which we talked about a little bit earlier, what that feeling of regret would feel like if I missed that workout, that's what drives me, right? And for me, I've always kind of been a student athlete. Even though I'm graduated from university, I'm graduated from law school, I still kind of see myself as a student athlete. Like I've never done just one thing. So for me, when someone asks me, how do I manage my time? Like, I think it's preparing myself for these situations. I know if I don't work out at 6 a.m., there's not really going to be another opportunity for me to do that. So either I do it now or I'm not going to do it. And the thought of me not doing it while other people will be doing it is enough to wake me up and say, bro, we got to go. We got to get this workout in, right? And when I'm at work, I'm at work. Like, yeah, there's obviously no leaving work to go work out and come back. Like, I'm at work. And I think me knowing that like this pocket of time is blacked out, I got to make sure this pocket of time I get my training done, I get my workouts done, I get my yoga done, I get my physio done. I had a massage today. I get my massage. I take care of my body. Like, that stuff is so important to me because it's making the time and prioritizing the time to do so.
Yeah, and I think as an athlete, the lack of free time is an advantage because you can't just put things off till later. You have to do them now, otherwise they don't happen, like you mentioned. So that's a huge advantage, and I like that student athlete mentality and just staying in it, because if you're not growing, you're dying, frankly. You know, everybody is, it's a competitive world, whether you're competing in sports, you're competing in your career, or you better be personally competing to get better. You're going to look in the mirror in a year and be like, damn, I was literally the exact same person a year ago. What did I do to get better? You know, so I like that mentality. Speaking of the mentality, tell me about switch mentality. What is that?
Yeah, no. So switch mentality kind of happened for me when I was in that phase of choosing between law school and the CFL. And when I did end up choosing law school, there was about a month in time where I didn't know who I was, right? Like, I was a guy who just ran the fastest 40. I was a guy who, one of the few Canadians who just got invited to like the Cleveland Brown mini camp. I had a pretty good camp in Montreal. And then all of a sudden I'm putting pro football on pause for a year after I'm here knocking on the door. And although in hindsight, and even at the time, like, I'm a very intuition based decision maker, and I knew it was the right decision. But there was about a period of time in which I wasn't playing football. I wasn't in law school. I started questioning, like, do I know who I am without the helmet? Right. And I think that moment in time is when I realized, okay, people need to be prepared for this because I've got law school waiting for me in a month and I still feel like this. How do people feel when it's a path of unknown, which is most football players, right? And that's when it hit me that, okay, there's got to be some type of resource out there to start preparing guys for life after football. So what such a mentality does is just fill that gap. It helps guys who are either struggling with their identity or guys who are preparing for that life after football with workshops, like maybe getting your LinkedIn right, getting your networking right, making sure that when you do a coffee chat, you actually know how to be presentable, how to ask the right questions, how to make sure that once that person leaves the coffee chat, they're not like, well, throw that resume away, because all of those things matter, right? When you're trying to get a job. And for most athletes, I find once they're in the job, they can do it with the best of them, right? Because now they're using all the skills they use through football, and like the long hours, the discipline, the dedication, the commitment, that stuff comes easy to them. But being in an interview and making sure you remember X, Y, and Z, and there's little nuances to interviews that maybe you may not know, you may have never been exposed to. And that could be the difference, right? So that's what situationality does. It just fills that gap, helps get guys prepared. So when that time comes, and very few people are able to choose when the end of their career comes, like some lucky people are, but some people, whether it's through injury, whether it's through the team maybe moving a different direction, you aren't really able to choose, right, when the time is over with. So when that happens, like, what's your next move? Is it, let me train for 2 to 3 years and hopefully another team picks me up? Or is it, okay, this might be over with, good thing I had this other thing going, let me pivot over to this.
Yeah, switch mentality, man. So it's a podcast, you got social media. What's the vision for it? Because it's very, very, it's necessary.
Right.
Like I'm personally myself, I navigated the transition out of football after 22 years of playing. From the first time I picked up a ball, 8 years old. I retired at 30 after the birth of my first son in my final season in 2019. Just so happened the next year was COVID. I was under contract. We didn't play. I signed another 1-year deal in 21. The season got delayed. And so then after I started to make that transition out of football over the course of like a year and a half of being off, but we were all off. So I feel like in a sense, I was sheltered a bit from that transition and I had so much time to think about it and process. But not everybody gets that luxury, if you will. I mean, maybe it's optimistic to call it a luxury, but so it's necessary. That's my point. Like what you're dealing with here, what you're giving people is necessary. And in a sense, that's what we're doing here at MVP too.
Right.
But like, what's the end vision or what's the big dream state of Switch Mentality? Is it to continue producing content? Do you want to do workshops and bring people in for seminars? Like, how do you see it all shaping out?
Right. So I think the first thing, and even when people ask this question, I always give a little caveat of sometimes things turn out to be something you never expected. Right. And I remember I like a year ago with Switch, I actually released these t-shirts, and I just released these t-shirts and, see like who would get them. Within 2 days, they sold out, and there was about 100 t-shirts. And I was like, whoa, hold on. I remember I was talking to this, I forget who it was that I was talking to, but I was talking to this person and I was like, my goal is not to be like a merch shop though. Like that's not my goal. And he said, and I remember this clearly, he said, you don't dictate what you are, the market does. And I was like, so not that the plan is to be a merch shop, but I think it has opened my lens for where the plan could go a variety of directions. So right now I'm doing the content and whatnot. Again, for me, the goal is not to necessarily be a content creator. I think that is more so for brand awareness and to let guys know that we know what we're talking about, like Switch Mentality, whether it be like in the football world, the professional world, or just like the personal world, that we understand how to get you from point A to point B. But the vision right now is to have those workshops, or have those workshops where a bunch of guys can come in, and after this hour and a half, we're going to leave here with a professional LinkedIn, right? We can start adding people on LinkedIn, and it doesn't look like you have like, a selfie and your only experience is professional athlete. That's not going to get the job done, right? So that would definitely be a part of it. Like individual services too, where that's been happening a little bit recently, where guys are trying to get their future planned out. So they'll give me a call. We'll figure something out in terms of individual academic planning. And it doesn't always have to be school. It's just understanding what's out there and how to go about it. So that's another piece of it. I got a little invitation to actually do some consulting actually too with different programs and whatnot. So I think what it will turn into may even be beyond my wildest dreams. But I think right now, if I had to pin down what it was going to turn into in the future vision, I would say a lot of workshops for student athletes and professional athletes alike, maybe going into different universities, schools, football teams, getting those guys a bit of a peek behind the curtain, whether it be the CFL world or the professional world. And similarly with like those individual calls, hopefully one day those will turn into like group sessions, right? Where I could help out a bunch of guys and we could attack that goal together. Cause like you said, it's a very needed thing. And sometimes it's guys don't realize it before it's too late. But I always try to give people the benefit of the doubt and say, like, you don't know what you don't know, right? And if you've been a star athlete your whole life and everybody's telling you how great you are and you never actually have to think about this kind of thing, it's easy to not think about this kind of thing, right? Because there's something that you're great at. People like to do things that they're good. I like to do things that I'm good at, right? So it makes sense, but people see very quickly, nobody, even Tom Brady, if he played till he was 40, and even him, like he's got hopefully another 40, 50 years left of life. He's got to do something else, right? And if he has to do something else, I'm sure everybody else will have to too. So it's just a matter of being prepared.
That's amazing. So yeah, getting to the end here, there's a couple of things I wanted to quickly hit on. You glossed over the fact that you ran the fastest 40 at the combine so smooth. What was your time?
4.47, double laser.
Double laser, y'all. Start and finish now. This ain't no hand time start and a laser finish like at the NFL combine. We talking real legit track time. So that's what's up. You still got it in you? He said, do I?
You see me at practice, I don't got
he said, do I? Come on. Don't let this blazer fool you now.
Don't let this blazer fool you. I got it.
That's amazing, man. And then I mean this as like the highest compliment. You are supremely articulate. Do you practice? Are you intentional about that? Did somebody put you on game that communication is the key that unlocks so many doors? Like that's a talent in and of itself. It's a talent and it's a skill, because I think part of it is personality, but a lot of it is practice. So where does that come from?
Yeah, so I would say like confidence and being articulate. I think it's a matter of not necessarily practicing, but being aware. And I think for me, like I watch a lot of things on YouTube, and some of those is how to be an effective speaker. Some of those are just watching effective speakers. Like I'll watch Mark Cuban, I'll watch, Jay Shetty. There's a bunch of like I used to watch TED Talks religiously, and not necessarily to be a better speaker, but because I was genuinely interested in the knowledge. And I think I started to notice a big difference between an effective communicator and a non-effective communicator. And there's little things that you pick up, similarly like watching film, right? You're watching film, you see what makes a great receiver. Well, these guys, I think they're all pretty great receivers and they all do this. I didn't really like the way this person did this route. Maybe I'm not going to watch their film anymore. I'm going to just keep watching these guys' film. And I think as time goes on, you find a way to implement that into your own style, of course. And you are a little bit cognizant. Like I know a lot of people sometimes they use filler words, like they use they use and not that I'm above that. I still think I do use some, but when I do use one of those, I'm very conscious of the fact that I used one. And I think that makes the difference sometimes, where I want to eliminate all of those words out of my vocabulary. So when I do use one in my head, I'm thinking, I'm better than that, and I think it's just a constant thing. Right?
Just competitive.
Yeah. So it's a constant thing. So I would say, honestly, it does take practice. I think I've been blessed to be able to do a lot of speaking engagements, whether it be in form of podcasts or going to schools or even being in a position where I'm talking to clients. And I think that's helped me in a way that is practice. And it's also the want to, right? Like, are you watching guys who are effective communicators and seeing what they do? Are you researching what effective communication looks like? And how are you implementing that into your everyday? And like everything else, it's not all at once, right? You implement one thing for a week or two. Okay, now you boosted your ratings. It's like you're a 2K My player, right? It's like a 2K My player. If you are constantly boosting multiple ratings, even if it's just a sprinkle per day, when you look back in 2 years, a year, everything is going to drastically increase from where it was. But if your only focus is football and all your ratings are just going into football might be a 99, right? But when you look back and see everything else, communication at a 25, being able to, whatever other skill, driving's at a 20, being able to sit in a room and talk to higher ups is at a 12. And it's because you didn't work on those skills. Like nothing really happens innately. Like what are you doing to make sure that the rest of your 2K ratings are going up? So for me, that's always been a big thing. How can I make sure that I'm not a specialist, right? I'm a balanced player. And in 2K, when you put that 3-point up to 99, you become a 3-point specialist, right? Like that's who you are. But if you're a guy that, 3 points at 92, your ball handling's at a 90, your passing's at an 88, now you're an all-around superstar. So which kind of guy do you want to be?
That's it. Yeah. And you know what? The one thing that people never put up until the end, awareness. But that's the most valuable trait of any game. I don't care if you're playing a Madden or if you're playing a real game of life, you got to step up your awareness. So, Chris, this has been dope, man. And I really do appreciate you taking the time. One question we want to ask everybody before they leave is top 3. Who are your favorite athletes? Any era, any sport?
Just like what they've done in the sport, or like
you can have any reason why, but I need your top 3 favorite, not the best, your top 3 favorite athletes, any sport, any era.
Jeez. Well, number 1 is easy, right? Number 1 is LeBron James. Not only is he, in my opinion, and many others, like the greatest athlete of all time, but he's doing so much off the field. Like of course, he did this more than an athlete thing. He just recently had a podcast, and he's building schools. He's a great teammate. He's a great high character guy. And to me, that's something I value when someone's a great athlete, because it's easy. And especially LeBron, of course, had a lot of God gifted ability, but to last that long, you have to be almost maniacal about being better at your sport. And I think he applied that same maniacal attitude to everything else in his life, right? You see all the filming businesses, you see Uninterrupted, you see the podcast, you see the wines, you see the schools. Like, so that's definitely one guy I look up to. So LeBron would definitely be number one. Famous favorite athlete. This is tough for me. I don't really idolize a lot of athletes per se. I think, you know what, another one might be Brandon Marshall. And that's going to be maybe a weird one, but it was largely, one, he's a receiver, and I think he's a pretty dang bigger bodied receiver. And, you know, I like to watch him a little bit when I was growing up. But during that COVID period, I watched a lot of I Am Athlete, like a lot of it. And just seeing the way he transitioned from football to entrepreneur, really, like you can call it a podcaster, but at the end of the day, he was an entrepreneur. And what he turned that into in House of Athletes and all the business moves he was making, I was looking at that like, man, this guy literally is showing you guys the formula, right? Mm-hmm. He was a successful football player. Whether he's a Hall of Famer or not is beyond my grasp, you know, maybe not. But he was like a very successful football player and found a niche in which he completely dominated. And I remember a video of him literally saying, when I got into the business world, I realized that it took a lot of discipline. It took communication. It took being responsible. It took being accountable. And I looked at it and I said, man, I played football for X amount of years. I already have the formula, right? And I remember that video because I posted on Swift Fatality, actually. And that was one of the things that stuck in my head. So again, I think sometimes when guys make moves off the field, I have a ton of respect for them. So I would put him in there, just especially because I'm on the spot. And third guy, you know, I'm going to go with another football player. Not necessarily because of off the field, but I'm going to say AJ Green. And I'm going to say AJ Green because when I was growing up and I started playing receiver, that was the one guy that I studied religiously. Like I just felt like we had a similar body type. I thought we had a similar game. And once I find one of those guys, I want to know what they do in the morning. I want to know how they train. I want to know how mobility is implemented in their routine. I want to know what they eat. Like I want to know what you do so I can be just as good, if not better than you. And AJ Green at that time, like he was a real dog. And I know maybe sometimes he gets a little forgotten about, but I remember I used to wear 18 because of AJ Green, and he was just someone I looked up to. And I thought he was, again, for me, I'm always cognizant of the player's character. Yeah, I genuinely think it's important. Like anybody can be a great athlete, but if you're a great athlete and a shitty person, it's tough for me to get behind you as a favorite. I can respect your game, right? Yeah. But it's tough for me to idolize you or to even support you in a way that I would someone that was a little bit more high character. And that's another thing I've always tried to pride myself into. Like, what is the worst thing that your teammates can say about you? And if the worst thing they can say about you is, damn, that guy goes hard at practice, that's a win, right? Like I get a little fired up at practice sometimes. And if that's the worst thing they can say, it's a win. Like you never want it to be, he doesn't come to meetings, or he's late a lot, or he doesn't take this serious, or he smokes too much. Like for me, I never wanted any of those things attached to my name. And I think for everybody, like they have different motivations, but again, I think that's important when choosing favorite athletes. And those guys I named, whether it be like AJ Green, LeBron James, Brandon Marshall, I think they could say that.
What a way to go out. That's awesome, man. I appreciate you, man. Where can people follow you, keep up with the progress on the field, off the field, and where can people tap into Switch Mentality?
Yeah, no, for sure. So we're on all platforms. We're on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. The website just came out, switchmentality.com, and it'll show you a lot really about some of the resources. We just dropped this thing called the Ultimate Free Guide for Student Athletes. So essentially it talks about like academic course load. It talks about where to find money. It talks about excelling on the field. It talks about healthy nutrition, just a bunch of things to really just a starter guide to get the wheels to start turning, right? And I think, like I said before, you don't know what you don't know. So if you're one of those people who are looking to learn more, like, I think that's a good place to start.
Amazing. Chris, appreciate it, man.
100%. And I just want to say, like, I've been seeing what you guys have been doing with MVP, and it's been dope, man. It's been dope. And I've been, liking stuff, engaging with stuff. And I think at the beginning, or once you're putting yourself out there, it's always difficult. Like we talked about, if you're not going to promote yourself, then who will? It's always difficult. But I just want to say, like, as someone who is like watching you guys, I see you on LinkedIn and stuff too, posting stuff, like, just keep posting, bro. And I think what you're doing is super valuable. I think there's a lot of plates for everybody to eat off in like the sports business world, and not enough people talk about it, right? Enough people want to talk about, where did Kirk Cousins end up? Who's Justin Jefferson going to play with? Justin Fields got traded, and I get that. Like, that's definitely important. But is it more important than talking about, like, what does your life look like 10 years from now? Like, how can you leverage your football career to make sure that you're in an amicable position 5 years from now? And I think you guys are doing a really good job of spotlighting people who have made that a priority. And like, for that, I commend you for sure. And if there's anything you guys ever need from me, I know we did this podcast, but anything you ever need down the line, like, I respect what you guys are doing. So just hit me up for sure.
Hey, we're gonna tap in, man. Once we get our workshops going, we're gonna have you come do some sessions and teach people in the most valuable person community all about what you've been studying, what you've been sharing. That'll be dope. But appreciate it, man. Appreciate it. Real recognize real, man.
Yes, sir.